Hey, this is Heal with Dr. Fred. And do you fear death? Do you fear death? Why do I ask this question? Well, if I was to ask you the question, are you afraid to die? What would you say? Hey, there's a lot of people that say, especially some religious people would say, no, I'm not afraid to die because when I go to heaven, I'll be with God, I'll be with Jesus. Other people like my mom, I'm done. Of course, she's 85. There's way too much suffering in the world. I'm okay. I've lived a fulfilled life. There's other people, obviously all of us would say, well, I don't really want to die. And then there's some that would say yes. And there's some that would say, no, I don't want to die. But guess what? Look out in the world today, because I just flew to Albuquerque and back, and how many people are wearing masks? Why would a person wear a mask? Why would a person go get a shot today? Maybe they would say, well, I just don't want to get sick. But what does sickness represent? Where does sickness actually evolve into? Well, I wear a mask to protect my grandmother, so there's fear of death all around us, people that truly fear death. And I want to talk about that, because what is death really? So why do I even ask this question? It has really nothing to do with death. It has everything to do with, how do you want to live? Isn't that really the question? And so let's look at that. So how you want to live really starts with, who do we believe we are? And we start with the most basic principle. Who do you believe you are? Well, let's go to Genesis 1:27. We're created in the likeness and image of God. We are spirit first. We are spirit living a human experience. Now, people on here go, yeah, I know that. Do you put a mask on? Are you walking around conforming to the world rather than transforming by renewing your mind? And what level of faith do we live with? What's our purpose? Are we living our purpose? So if all of these principles are true, that we are spiritual beings first, then we are eternal. And death really doesn't exist. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So if we are eternal, that means we're never born. We were born, we come into this body, and our body was born. It means we never die. Death does not exist. And isn't that why Jesus came here? Jesus didn't come to die on the cross. He died on the cross for the resurrection. He was actually convicted by religion. He was convicted by humanity. So when he said, forgive them, for they know not what they do, what he meant was, and I know this through a personal experience with an out-of-body experience with Jesus in another dimension, where he showed me what that meant. I would not have known this. What he says, for they know not what they do, meaning they're living in their humanity, and some people have no conscience of their divinity. They may have it in their mind, but are they living it through experience in their body? So let's go to some basic principles of why this is true. And if we don't want to die, we're not ready to pass out of this body yet. Hey, if you can still breathe on a mirror and fog it, you haven't fulfilled your purpose yet. But let's go back to Psalm 139:16. Are your beliefs getting you what you want? Well, this could be a great belief. Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed. Meaning you're sitting there with God. You didn't come into this body yet. And in your book, all the days were written. The days fashioned for me, not to me, for me, when as yet there were none of them. So it's like you're sitting there with God. You're sitting there in this divine realm, in the spirit world, going, man, I see the movie trailer, what I'm going to go through. I see every pain. I see every condition. I see where the conditions of the world in. Put me in, man. Put me in, coach. I want to go be in this world right now. Now, is that to live with a fear of death? Because your spirit doesn't know death. Your human mind may know death. And then we run around doing all these things, conforming to the world and conforming to the narrative, which wants to put you in survival, which wants you to fear death, because under your greatest survival fear is when we can divide, conquer, separate, and then control humanity. So here's an interesting belief. You chose to be here at that time. You knew what you were going to go through. And so isn't that amazing? If you chose it, then eventually we come into full consciousness of it. So here's the law of conservation of energy. Conservation of energy law means it happens every time. is that energy neither can be created nor destroyed. Rather, it can be only transformed or transferred from one form to another. Now, isn't this fascinating? Because I've interviewed numerous people that have had near-death experiences, and we have these interviews on a podcast I'm coming out with, Healed with Dr. Fred, and you're going to hear these stories where people either have trauma or sickness, and what happened is they died. Their spirit left their body, and they're sitting outside their body and not even realizing that they're dead because they didn't die. They changed form. And all of a sudden, they have this feeling of abundance. They have this feeling of peace. They have this feeling of heavenly love. And they feel all this, and then they look back at their body, and then there's a secondary realization from almost that human consciousness and spirit form that says, wow, I died. And then they realize, but this is who I am. And then they relish in that energy, looking back at their body, looking back at that human consciousness, saying, wow, the body is so limited. My consciousness and my humanity is so limited because I'm in an unlimited, miraculous place of possibility. And then many people are like, hey, I like this a lot better. I'm not so sure I want to come back. But then there's a purpose, right? And they come back into the body. But many have these spiritual gifts and awareness. They remember. Just like when I was in another dimension with Christ, I remember that experience. Now, do I live from that every moment, every day of my life? No. But it is a reference point. So how can we learn from these people without having that experience? Because I personally don't really want a near-death experience. I don't want to die and come back. But if that was my purpose to figure it out, I don't know. What do we do? So isn't that fascinating? So let's go back some principles. Again, Genesis 1:27. So we created man in his image, God's image, the image of God, created him, male and female. That means we're still the same, even though our human bodies may be different. 1 Corinthians 3:16. Do you not know that you are the temple of God and that the Spirit of God dwells in you? You are eternal. You were never born. You will never die. Your body was born. Your body may pass. And you may pass with a whole new realization that you are always in here. You are living in here. So where would the fear of death be? John 3:15. So that everyone who believes in him, meaning in Jesus, and that's Christ conscious, will have eternal life. And isn't that why Jesus came? He didn't come to die. He didn't come so we wear a cross around our neck. I mean, I understand that's the forgiveness of sins. I get it. However, God never saw your sin. He came that you may have life. He came that you may have freedom. He came that you may realize that you're spirit first. Now we go to Martin Luther King. How do you truly have freedom? This is a quote. 1, forgive everybody for everything anyone has ever done to you. Why? So you can release that human emotion. Isn't that Jesus' message? Love to the level of God loves and forgive. What's the second thing? Lose the fear of death. Why? Because we're here as a spirit. We're here as a spiritual being. So we love to the level of Christ. We lose death the fear of death, so we can live with freedom now and create heaven on earth. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So for all the Christians that think that are taught in religion, or all the spiritual people or religious people that think, wow, I can't wait because that's where I'm going to meet him. God and Jesus are already in your heart. They're in your heart now. They're in you, around you, and in front of you. And we're meant, thy will be done on earth today in this body as it is in heaven right now. Those two can be the same if you choose to be conscious of it. Isn't that amazing? So Matthew 19:26, with man, this is impossible. What's that mean? In our human consciousness, there's lots of things that are impossible. But with God, all things are possible. Isn't that amazing? Getting into that Christ consciousness, understanding our divinity, being one with God and one with people because we're all the same. So again, Jesus didn't come for the cross. He came for the resurrection. John 14:12, I tell you the truth, and this is Jesus speaking, anyone who believes in me, meaning that Christ consciousness, or you could say believes like me, will do the same works I have done and even greater works because I'm going to be with the Father. What's that mean? That means when you're one with God, you have that Christ consciousness. You can perform miracles on earth as it is in heaven. Thy will be done. So when we believe like Christ, we have abundant goodness that flows from us. We have abundant love, peace, and understanding that results in abundant health, because sin and death is disease. It's the fear of sin and death that creates the disease. It's the limited time frame and consciousness that creates the disease. So you become an enlightened soul. You're always grateful. We don't have to wait to die to see God or Jesus, because we can create heaven on earth. So not only can we lose the fear of death, but we can truly be given the gift and freedom of life. All right, thanks, you guys. Hey, go to youaremorepowerful.com. That's where the Healed System is. Also, you can tap into Heal with Dr. Fred. It's $9.97 a month, where all these are archived. Let's create heaven on earth together right now. And please share this. Thanks.